Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard D. the Cruz.
Sega does what Nintendo don't.
And Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
I mean, Nintendo don't?
It is Monday. What's the date today? It is.
Just a Nintendo.
Today's July 4th.
Yes,
I didn't hear what you said.
It's some important day, I guess.
Wait, so how did you mess up the famous thing?
No, just Connor played off of it. I said Sega does what Nintendo don't. And then Connor's like, well, Nintendo don't. Like,
I didn't hear you say Nintendo. I just heard Nintendo.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, did you
because that's a smart play because they're not doing what we want them to.
It is July 4th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. So you can support us for $247 and $10 and get your name in the credits and early access to videos, access to our Discord server, more stuff like that. So we won't have a podcast next week. We're recording this one late. We pushed the date to July 4th because
we've really wanted to get those fireworks in the background.
I completely forgot about that. We need to be done in 15 minutes. It's not dark out yet, so hopefully.
Is there any places around here that do fireworks?
Dude, people do out in the streets.
Oh man.
We should have recorded this podcast in a different country.
Fuck. Trying to make it look real.
What was I going to say?
Back up, Terry.
Check out Gaming Discourse FM on YouTube.
Thank you.
Where we post our favorite video game music.
So we will not have a podcast next week. So we will return the week after. Hopefully no major news breaks. We're going to get into more.
It's only going to be breaking news next
FTC,
week.
Xbox juicy details and stuff like that. We're going to dig into the Perfect Dark story that we didn't get to last week. Okay, I will start with what I have been playing. So I haven't been playing a ton of stuff. I played a little bit more Squad, got back into Squad. Squad added a few more factions. They added the Chinese Marines. I don't remember what it's called, but it's like the Chinese equivalent of the U.S. Marines, where they are, what's the amphibious? It's like an amphibious assault force. So they have different vehicles. They have one tank it's the biggest vehicle on the game. It's huge, and it's got a massive cannon on it. But I don't know what its armor is like because it's made to be amphibious. So I assume that because if it's amphibious, it can't be super heavy, which means it can't have a ton of heavy armor. But I haven't seen it in a game. And they added the Russian Airborne. And I believe the major difference with the Russian Airborne is I think some of their classes use the AK-47U, which is like a smaller, like the M4 to the to the M16 or something like that. And some of their vehicles are a bit different too. But and one of the significant things about that is in Squad there's a game mode called Invasion, where one team starts like on an island or something, or on a beach, and you're going to defend it, and the other team starts on an aircraft carrier, and it's really freaking cool because when the game starts, it's not like a Battlefield where as soon as you jump into a game, everybody just gets into a vehicle and goes. There's like a 5-minute staging period that everybody loads in. You talk about what you're going to do. So when all the vehicles unlock at the same time, so it looks freaking awesome when you're in Invasion and you're playing as like the U.S. Marines, because if you're in the aircraft carrier and you're on a helicopter, you see all the vehicles go out as the helicopter's blades are going, and then all the helicopters go out at once. So you're part of this like huge invasion force that's all going out at once, which looks really cool. Awesome. So these new factions have new amphibious vehicles, which means on these game modes, there's now different factions that'll be attacking. For a long time, it was just like the Marines and maybe one other faction, because that was the only faction that had a lot of amphibious vehicles. But now there's more, which is one of the major differences with the Russian Airborne that is difficult. So vehicles are important in Squad because the maps are huge. You run slowly. If you die, long respawn timer, and you have to cover a bunch of ground again. So communicating vehicle transport is really important. The Russian Airborne have these little tiny like duck boats that are just pieces of shit. They're really small. They're really slow. They're really hard to drive, and they only hold like 6 dudes. And there can be like 10 dudes in a squad, which means, and I made the mistake, it was my first game, so I was like, all right, I hop in here, squad, hop into this vehicle, and there's not enough room. And I was like, oh, shit. So there's like 4 guys that had to just walk, and we had to go to the first objective, drop everybody off like it was at school, and then like drive back and get in. So So you have to coordinate that with the Russian Airborne, which is going to be difficult. But that's what Squad is all about. Squad, you have all these different factions that have subtle differences, and then that's what makes the tactical differences fun and whatnot. Other than that, so I'm working on my Splinter Cell video right now. I don't know how it's going to shape up. The first one was the first 3 games, Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow, and Chaos Theory. It was more about the narrative than it was the gameplay. I don't know how I'm going to do it this time around. But now I just finished Double Agent on the Xbox, and now I'm playing Splinter Cell Essentials. But I was amazed because Double Agent on the Xbox, I always knew was different from the 360 version, and there was like different cutscenes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew there were certain levels that weren't in the 360 version. I had no idea how different, and it feels like I have been living a lie because I'm a huge Splinter Cell fan. And Splinter Cell or Double Agent on the Xbox, the premise is still the same. It's the same characters. It's the same like major story elements, but there isn't. All the levels are different. There are no like levels that you can pluck out and you're like, oh, this is the level from Double Agent. They're all the same. They take place in similar places. Like there's a level in Iceland. I'm pretty sure the Double Agent on the 3 or Double Agent version 2 is version 1 and version 2. Technically, the split wasn't Xbox and 360. That's just because that's what I'm playing it on. But one of them was released was the Xbox and was it the GameCube?
For Double Agent?
Yeah.
No, Double Agent was Xbox exclusive. It was only original Xbox and
so what was
360.
Wasn't there like a GameCube or
no? I'm
Wii
sorry.
version?
There's a PS2 version. No, there's a Wii version. There's a Wii version. I'm so sorry.
One of the versions has a Nintendo version.
Yeah, there's a Wii version. Yes.
So I wanted to clarify because the version is not an Xbox and a 360 game. It's like a 360 / PS3 / Wii version, and then like an Xbox version. I don't know. Anyway, the more important point, is that Double Agent on the Xbox is a very different game. And I was surprised. I was also surprised it's really, really good. So I was like, holy crap, this isn't only different. This is like a really good Splinter Cell game. And they do some things differently. I haven't played version 2 of Double Agent in like 10 years. I think the last time I played it was 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. But I don't remember Double Agent on the 360 version 2, whatever it is, being as like, it doesn't hold your hand as much with decision making as the Xbox version does. The Xbox version clearly tells you like what your decisions will do. So one of the main story focuses is Lambert, who is Sam's handler, his boss, and in the Xbox. So in the big selling point with the next gen version of Double Agent is that you had to choose whether or not to kill Lambert, right? Is the terrorist cell that Sam is embedded with, that he's undercover with. They capture Lambert. They have suspicions about Sam. They're like, hey, prove your loyalty to us and shoot this guy we captured who you definitely don't know, right, Sam? And then you have to make that decision, and that decision is a major plot point of the game. In the Xbox and the old gen version, the Xbox generation version, you don't kill Sam. They capture him, and you either plant evidence supporting that he's a spy, or you plant evidence that they got it wrong and he's not actually a spy. But you don't even see Lambert, which I thought was weird because that was a huge thing with the new.
It creates a more tense moment, right?
Yeah. And I don't want to get into too much what I plan on writing, mostly because I don't know. But one thing that I've always, not disliked, I guess I just, one thing I've always thought was obvious was Sam in that moment when he is forced to, and Jamie is the terrorist who you're with at the time. And Jamie's like, okay, Sam, shoot him. Shoot Lambert. And it's right at the end of the game. It has never made sense to me that Sam would shoot Lambert, because Sam has always, I think if you pick up the pieces, the Splinter Cell's like narrative pieces, Sam is cynical. He doesn't like the actions of the U.S. government, but LAX also can't be, exploded by a giant bomb. So he does that. But Sam is in this. There's lots of friction between him and Lambert and sort of the greater U.S. government. And there's other discussions about the politics there to be had. But so at the end of this character arc, once Sam has gone through, he's had his arguments with Lambert over the years. He had to kill Douglas Shetland in Chaos Theory, who was his commanding officer when he was in the Navy SEALs. So he's gone through all this to protect the country. And then he finally gets to the point where it's like, okay, now you have to kill Lambert. It always made more sense that Sam just said, no, fuck this. And you just kill Jamie and then you go and take out the terror. And that always made more sense to me from a character standpoint, because at that point, Sam's just like, I've broken the rules up to this point. Why am I all of a sudden going to, kill somebody who I have disagreements with, but I hold dear, to like not break one more final rule. So that's a bit of a disappointment in the old version of Double Agent, because they don't have that moment of tension, but also that's I think an important part of Sam's character. Now, on one hand, the Splinter Cell storyline is like a big mess, because there are things that happen in Essentials, which was the PSP. I think it was just the PSP version, exclusive, where like there's only one thing that like the Essentials are like tell bits and pieces of Sam's story throughout the years up to Double Agent. And I'm pretty sure there's choices you make in Essentials that you can only make one thing. Like I think in Essentials you have to shoot Lambert. I may be wrong about that. I don't know. But again, that didn't make, so it's like the story is a complete mess, because not only do you have two games that are telling two versions of the same story, but Essentials is like doing its own thing on the PSP, and I'm sure some are considered not canon or officially not canon or whatever. But I think there's enough there that you could tell like a coherent story about a character if they didn't have these weird contradictions that exist for, I'm sure, really complicated game business reasons. But so yeah, the other thing that made me a little like weirded out by the old version of Double Agent was, so the impetus for Sam taking this Connor, don't press buttons, okay? I'm in the middle of a serious discussion.
No one else would have heard that.
Oh my God.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, if you didn't hear, that's because Connor pressed, but it doesn't matter.
Oh my
All
God.
right, so the other thing that made me I was a little weirded out by, the impetus of Sam taking the Double Agent mission was his daughter dying, right? At the beginning of Double Agent, right? So he was like, okay, screw it, I'll take this dangerous mission. There's a character in the terrorist cell, Enrica is her name. I don't know if that's her name in the next gen version of Double Agent. I don't remember. But her and Sam develop, like, in the 360, playing on the 360, from what I remember, they develop sort of a light romance, kind of, right, for each other, which kind of makes sense. And then there's a decision that if you make it, you save people, but she dies, so there's the tension there. In the old version of Double Agent, unless I heard this wrong, they describe her as being of the same age of Sam's daughter. So it's like, oh, okay, so he's going to go into this terrorist cell, and he's going to have to kill a woman that's the same age as his daughter. That's the narrative, right? And that's tragic, whatever. But what ends up happening is they also have like a weird romance, which I thought was really odd. And the story, the Xbox version does no groundwork to build up the relationships. So it's all just very hollow and weird. You can tell that they thought a lot about the decisions you'd make and how that would impact gameplay and stuff like that. But the narrative of like having a deeper discussion about betrayal and if you could actually come to like some of these people that are working for these terrorists is just completely forgotten about. And it's just like melodramatic cutscenes that are really bad. But again, still really enjoyed it. And yeah, now I'm going to move on to Essentials, which I've beaten the first couple levels of, and I'm going to do the new version. Yes.
But it sounds like to get the full picture of Double Agent, you got to play both sides.
Yeah, and so I'm going to have to, and I'll go back through the Xbox, because there's, I was able to get through the Xbox version without,
Thank you, Rich.
without murdering anybody. And that was the thing is, but in my defense, if you're going to have a character that Sam has that serious of a relationship with, you have to write that relationship in either way.
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense that it's not there. And my playthrough was full on third echelon. I saved like at every decision. Like it's almost comical because like I was like, hey Sam, welcome to our terror cell. We're suspicious of you. And then like every mission I go on goes wrong. No bombs go off. They're like, damn it, Sam, we just don't know what's happening. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's completely like they for some
Holding
reason,
red and blue cut wires. I don't know what's going on, guys.
yeah, exactly. Oh, nice goggles, Sam. What? Damn, those must cost $50,000. But yeah, you're definitely a career thief who spent most of his life in jail. Anyway, so it's like but that's video game stuff, whatever. So yeah, I'll dive more into it, and and I'm gonna have to play through the other way, and the other way will be fun because when I played through it in the third echelon, like going third echelon, I tried to like sneak through entire missions. I went through one mission, and I think for the first time in my life, I got through a Splinter Cell mission, and the only thing I did was knock out one guard. I didn't fire around. I'd like almost ghosted through the entire thing.
Claim to fame.
Yeah. But in my like terrorist playthrough where I'm like doing the terrorist objectives, I'll just shoot the shit out of it. Like it'll be fine. I'll have alarms. I'll have like bad stealth scores. Don't give a shit. Just got to get through it, and it'll work fine.
Kicks open the door playing hard rock music and just mows down enemies like it's an action movie.
There you go. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say about that. Would you like to go, Richard?
Yeah, I've been playing lots more Final Fantasy 16.
Hey.
And I am very much still enjoying it, actually probably enjoying it more than I did when I first started. The story, at least. Nothing is really wrong with the gameplay besides, I think, 2 or 3 major things. One of which, and this is a sentiment that you've probably seen online, but the game is kind of easy. And there are no difficulties to choose from at the beginning of the game. Well, there is story mode, and then there's action mode. And story mode is if you just want to like kind of focus on the story, the action won't be as intense. And then there's action mode, which is like, oh, if you're a seasoned, action game player, you can play this. But it doesn't seem that it's had an effect on anything. I haven't encountered anything that is very difficult. I have died, but it's mostly due to just error on like my part or not being patient and trying to kill things at once, and so I think that's a big a bigger downside to it. I hope that with stuff like the bounty board, which I just unlocked, which you go hunt monsters that are at certain grades, I hope that that'll probably bring in some more difficulty. And then there's a new game plus, so maybe there'll be more difficulty options with that, but as of now it's a little easy. I'm probably about 20 hours into it, I think, but the gameplay itself is very, very good. Just when you kind of mow things down without an inkling of thought process, it's slightly disappointing. On top of that, kind of goes hand in hand with it being too easy. The item system, not the item system, having shops is kind of useless, because they don't offer anything that is ever better than what I already have. And there's a certain point in the game where you are given a particular set of items. And I have had that particular set of items for a majority of the game so far.
Okay.
And almost everything, it's like, hey, the shop has new stuff. And oh, cool. So I go to the shop, and it's nothing even comes close to what I have to equip in order to even get better. And so it's kind of weird. The only thing I have improved would be my weapons, or my sword, which is not something you upgrade it at the blacksmith, but I've always had, because I'm fighting all these monsters, I've always had what I needed to upgrade your sword. And so it's, yeah, like I said, it seems kind of useless to have that there. So I hope and I wonder if anything's going to get better on as far as that goes. The side quest structure is MMO-like as well. A lot of, hey, can you do this for me? Can you go grab that? But it's kind of woven into the world that they're living in. So although it is a bit cumbersome, it connects with what is going on with the world. So at least it's somewhat interesting. But the overall story I think is quite intriguing for a Final Fantasy game. And the problem with, we talked about how mature this one is compared to the other games. And that is true, I think, mostly to the extent that we now have like the graphical capabilities and the story structure, how the game is like filmed, quote unquote.
Oh, okay. Like cinematography?
The cinematography. Thank you. To present that to people. Whereas like there's, like Final Fantasy VI on the Super Nintendo had a really integral part where like the villain poisons an entire village. And that's terrible. But, because we have these like little sprites, it's conveying it isn't as impactful.
Yeah.
It definitely was impactful then, but comparatively, it's not very impactful.
Definitely,
so
sure.
When we have a story that's actively tackling genocide and the visual culling of certain people, it kind of hits harder.
That does seem like a dark Final Fantasy story.
Yeah. So there's I believe 5 kingdoms, and they're kind of, most of them are at peace with each other, but there is something that's corrupting the land, and it's slowly like creeping in. So then it kind of becomes a resource fight. We need more resources, and so people start butting heads. But in the middle of it, there are 2 types of people. There's more than that, but there's 2 types of people. There are bearers, they call them bearers, and they're able to use magic innately. And then there are people who have crystals. Well, you can just grab a crystal and you can channel magic through that crystal. The people who are bearers are slaves, which is an interesting dynamic because you figure somebody who's innately able to do it would have more powerful.
Yeah.
The crutch from it for the bearers is that if they channel too much energy, they begin to turn to stone. And they die.
Okay, interesting. All right.
Yeah. So they are treated very badly. They are the ones that are being killed.
Okay.
Or, to the point where they're being killed. And there was a pretty intense side story that involved, if you don't mind me getting into it, I'm probably going to get a little spoilery if that's okay.
I'm fine with Final Fantasy 16 spoilers.
So you go to this area and you meet this person, and they're like, oh, could you help my daughter? You're a bearer. Could you help my daughter? She's trying to find her pet. You're like, yeah, sure. Go ahead. I'll go find your daughter's pet. So you go to a windmill a little distance away. There's a dog barking. You go up to the dog and you're like, hey, this dog is, like, you don't look like the pet I'm looking for. Like, you're not described as what I'm trying to find, but he's barking at something. When you look over, you see there's a body, and the body is turned to stone. So you go over there, and as soon as you go over there, you realize it was a bear turned to stone, and you hear this little girl goes, oh no, my pet. She runs up, and she's like, my pet's gone. Like, my pet died. She's like, I guess I'll tell my parents to buy me another one. Like, and it was very like, oh shit. Like, what the, like, that's pretty rough. Like, stuff like that has happened before in games or media and stuff. But Clive, the main character, had to have this, like, what are you talking about? And the little girl didn't know because how she's being raised.
Sure.
To treat them as unequals. It was very, very interesting and more mature than Final Fantasies have been. So.
Well, I haven't played a ton of Final Fantasy themes, but I know like Final Fantasy VII has the environmentalist,
sure,
industrialist, pollution type theme and stuff like that. But that's straight up like antebellum South type kind of.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild. There are other connections to it, but yeah, that particular instance had me like kind of taken aback, and made me more invested into the world that's going on.
And that makes sense. That makes sense.
So I thought it was very cool. And so it is impressive in the storytelling front. But that was like one of the major side quest things that I like came across. And I was like, wow, this is unfurling pretty well. So I can't wait to keep going at it. But yeah.
So you're pretty positive on Final Fantasy 16 then?
For the most part, story and gameplay wise, but I mean, there's just those few little like things that is, I don't want to say they could have taken it out, but it could have been more robust. And I think that a lot more fans of the role-playing aspect of Final Fantasy would be more attracted to it if it did have that, better equipable items, more customization when it comes to that.
Okay. Connor?
So I beat Star Trek Resurgence last week.
Yeah. You can't spoil it, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Because I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I will give it a rating, though, using our rating system.
Oh, okay.
Which, overall, everything included, it just scrapes by as a D.
Wow. That bad, huh?
It was...
The game did get an update.
It did get an update.
But remember, it was not an early access release. So the fact that the update gave it...
Y-axis inversion.
Yeah, the update had a Y-axis inversion
I can't believe it didn't have it in the first place.
I know game development's hard. We talk about it all the time.
Yes.
But I feel like that's got to be... Come on.
the saving grace of the game was just the overarching story.
It was pretty good?
It's a very solid Star Trek story.
Okay.
Some of the characters range from really well written to what the fuck is going on.
All right. Interesting.
And then the gameplay, you've played it.
Nothing feels good.
Nothing. It is jank. It is all jank. One of the things in the 1.1 patch that was listed in the patch notes was they made flying the shuttle easier, and I didn't realize it wasn't difficult.
Well, the shuttle wobbles, and I don't know why. So maybe they just mean it doesn't wobble as much.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't sure what they were trying to do.
Yeah,
like it was supposed to be like interstellar turbulence or something like that. Which I know what turbulence is, but you can write sci-fi nothing technobabble and have turbulence in
technobabble
space.
works and fixes everything in Star Trek.
But yeah, well, okay. Well, that's too bad. It's a home run. I'm telling you. Like a Telltale style Star Trek series is just such a home run idea.
Yeah.
Everything was laid out for them to make a good game. They had a good story.
Yeah.
They had somewhat interesting characters, and they just fumbled most of it.
You know what else is a home run idea? Picture this. I'm a bag of dicks, but no, I'm kidding.
Dude, just the same time.
Picture this. It's Killer Mike. It's a song if you don't know. Okay, picture this. God of War type game, but you play as Worf, and you're on like a Klingon quest. I think that'd be incredible. One of your weapons.
Like before everything or after?
How do you mean?
Before you joined the Starfleet.
Oh, well, see, that's the interesting thing. So buckle up, Richard.
Oh, boy. Here we go. Here we go, baby.
No, because Worf goes on, he has these personal quests he goes on. Yeah. And this is actually a theme in Star Trek where characters, they join Starfleet, they get a leave of absence to go take care of something personal. But Worf being violent isn't necessarily a bad thing, but so I would say like during his time with Star Trek, or maybe like after DS9, always had this cool idea where it's like an action hack and slash type game, but you play as Worf and he goes on this like Klingon quest on this distant planet because Worf is very he takes Klingon religion, Klingon mythology very seriously. He's almost like socially conservative in some ways when it comes to Klingons. Sorry, I don't know why I'm talking about my fantasy Star Trek video games. It popped into my head. Anything else, Connor?
Not yet. There was a part that I was stuck on for about 30 minutes because it was a shooting section and the controls are just jank.
Yeah, they're very bad.
And yeah, it's I muscled through it just because I was really enjoying the story and just pushed through some of the bad writing and pushed through some of the jank controls just to finish the game.
Okay. Well, that's when I want to go back because I want to do some kind of video for it. I don't know what, but that's when I need to go back and play. When it's good, it is good though. Like
I'm trying. I think I probably asked you this last week, but how far did you get into it? Like what was the last major like plot point that
I was hiding from enemies as the commander. I forget her name.
Okay, were you going into the mines thing?
I was already in the mines.
Okay, you're already in the mines.
And then I did the escape where you fire and you have to protect your companion as she's operating the machinery, and it's really bad.
Yeah.
I think that's the last thing I remember.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I don't know, was it like a fourth of the way through? Half?
That's still the first act.
Oh, okay. Well,
you're just at the end of the first act.
Okay.
So.
All right. Okay then. Let's hit the ad. Let's get to the news. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server.
Tyler, watches and it's like they need to stop doing that. But as soon as Tyler wants a game that relies on characters,
when did I say you can't do that?
You admonish games for doing that. Like they need to,
No, that's different. That is totally different. That's because games are beholden to things for like corporate. I'm saying. I reject that. We're not
they're beholden to things and using characters from other media because that's what the executives think will draw people in. So that's why Tyler wants a Worf game.
Okay, you really want me to go here? Because there is more Worf story to tell. The reason I said after DS9 is Worf goes through a very acute trauma in DS9. Thank you very much, which would lead him on some kind of quest of self-discovery and salvation, right? Unlike Spock, who, not going to talk about this. Okay. We're going to get into more juicy details on the Xbox versus FTC. This reporting, we're going to go through a bunch of stuff here. So this is reporting via Axios, The Verge, IGN, Eurogamer, GamesIndustry.biz. Basically everybody's reporting different stuff. So some of the highlights from the past week or so: poorly redacted documents showed Last of Us 2 had a $220 million budget with about 200 staff, while Horizon Forbidden West had a $212 million budget with 300 staff. Also, 1 million PlayStation users only play COD, which brought in an estimated $800 million in Sony's US revenues. I believe that was 2021, and 1.5 billion globally. Xbox hoped to acquire various companies. This was revealed in documents, including Thunderful, Supergiant, Niantic, Playrix, Zynga, Bungie, IO Interactive, Scopely, and Square Enix. And that was, of course, before Embracer swooped in there. There is still disagreement over how big of a deal cloud gaming could become. An FTC lawyer said, quote, "Game Pass is a strategic driver for Microsoft's gaming business. The effect of this transaction to turbocharge Game Pass, leave Google, Amazon in the dust, and build the content moat around Game Pass is in the record and compelling. There is a concern that you take this content and use it to advance your own platform, and the consumer is harmed. We end up in a world where instead of having content available, it's all just Game Pass, and maybe Sony has PlayStation Plus, and those two suck up all the content, and that's it." End quote. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, I'm not sure how specifically to pronounce it, said it's possible for cloud gaming to become a breakthrough market, but, quote, "I don't think of it as strictly a substitute for the console. I mean, at least the market feedback to date has been people love their consoles, people love their PCs, people love their phones, and use cloud gaming as an adjunct. However, whenever I think about the cloud in the context of the Xbox pillars of content, cloud, and community, Xbox Live is a part of the cloud. So even when you're thinking about a console or a PC, the cloud is actually very integral to the experience. So it's not just streaming alone when I think about the cloud," end quote. Okay. So what thoughts do we have on the stuff that was shown or stuff that was not, that we didn't talk about?
It was very, very fun to watch the shit show that was when those documents appeared with the poorly redacted. I think it was a Sharpie that they use, a Sharpie marker to like block it out. That's why. That's why it appeared. Yeah, that's why it appeared on the scans. It was very interesting because we already had an inkling about how much games cost to develop nowadays. But now we have at least hard numbers for arguably two of the biggest games
right,
in the last 4 years.
Yep.
And to me, that kind of we won't have it happen as much as I wanted to, but spending needs to be pulled back a little bit on these games. But we know that throughout the years, everybody wants everything bigger and better. So it's just something that's going to keep going. But it's wild to see how much, especially the staff, like particularly with Horizon Forbidden West, having 300 people on their staff. That's insane, and it still took 5 years for that game to come out.
Yeah, it took a long time. So I think, I don't know, a lot of this makes me nervous because at one point, I think the judge asked because these people just don't understand video games. They understand way more than I'll ever know about many markets and law.
Yeah.
But they clearly just don't understand video games very much.
Especially, the FTC especially.
And like at one point I'm paraphrasing here, but the FTC was asked if a game that compared to Call of Duty, and they said Elder Scrolls, which clearly is just not true.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly what the context was, but just the fact that they tried to make this comparison between two things, which I don't think anybody who like follows games, both series are popular, but they're not popular in the same way. They're not marketable in the same way. They're completely different genres. You go on and on and on. They have different histories. So it's like the guys arguing that Microsoft is going to take over the world if they do this don't have it. Their understanding of the industry sort of ends at their lawyer's argument that Microsoft is going to take over the world, and they just have to argue that regardless of how well they actually understand the industry. Against somebody like Microsoft, who I think understands the industry more, but because they're a corporation, they're going to be more disingenuous about it. So that's like thing number one that makes me scary. Another thing is, Call of Duty's power is terrifying because it's a massive game, and it is like Call of Duty is one thing of like 2-3 franchises that is holding up Activision right now. And that's not how you want to run companies, correct? Like, right. But that's not, because the things that are true now will not always be true. So yeah, sure, Call of Duty is popular now, but Battlefield was once as popular as Call of Duty. People that were on the internet
there was
15
a point where
years
it was
ago,
more popular than Call of Duty.
Yeah, there was a point where it was more popular than Call of Duty. People thought Call of Duty was like lazy and boring, and Battlefield was the innovator. And at one point, it was like, which one? There was like a rivalry.
Yeah, there was.
Medal of Honor was in there too. Remember that, kids? And now we're at a point. So again, the point I'm making here is that you have all this invested into one, I think, fairly mediocre franchise that gets off on being popular and accessible. And one day that may not be the case anymore. And once that's not the case, you're going to have a big problem at your company that you built around a tripod. And if one of those, and they have said this, they say this in like quarterly reports and stuff when they say things that could hurt our company, and like one of them is climate change, and the next one is we only make 3 games. So it's like those are legitimate problems. Well, they only make money off of 3 games,
and then sharpie it out as execs can't keep it in their pants.
Or they just do one thin cross out with a pin. That should get them. That should hold them off. The other thing about the game budgets, Richard, you are 100% correct. So the conversation should not be, holy shit, Last of Us 2 costs this much money. Yeah. We need more microtransactions. Games need to be $90. The discussion needs to be, and I don't know if I'm creating a bit of a straw man here, because I don't know if people are having that discussion. I do know people have had that discussion in the past, and it's often something that people say when you bring up like additional payment schemes and things like that. The budget of games, 100% true. But the conversation should not be, there's nothing we can do, so we have to do all these other ways to make money. The conversation should be, how do you make those games more cost effective and cheaper? Because Last of Us looked amazing, and the visuals were stunning and all that, but did its entire success come from the fact that it was just a good looking game? No, I don't think so. Horizon Zero Dawn, that series, is a very good looking game, but again, we've had this discussion, like how much of this market, how much of the money being made is totally based on just fidelity. And I think fidelity is overrated. And I think fidelity might be one of the big reasons that game budgets keep rising, right? The other thing about, I'm just speculating here. The other thing about Forbidden West, how impressive it was when like every single time you talk to somebody, they didn't have repetitive animations, right? It was like they just filmed the person talking, and that was their body language. Okay, that's really interesting. How much did that cost? And if Forbidden West didn't have that, Would I be disappointed? Sure. Would it be a worse game? Would it sell less? Probably not.
I don't think you would have been disappointed because if it wasn't there to begin with.
I know, but I'm just with hindsight being what I mean. I'm just saying in a context obviously that can't exist. Knowing that a technology can produce something like that, if that is not in a game going forward, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's a conversation we should be having. Is something has to plateau, something has to stop. Games cannot continuously get more expensive. And why are they getting more expensive? Technology. The games are longer. Okay, then those are the things we should look at and say, how can you manage that stuff better before you start, having bone armor that costs $21 in Diablo 4. So before you go there, why don't you see not where you can make games worse, not where you can pay employees less, but where you can make games at a more sustainable budget. And there are companies that do this. Not every company is looking to take over the world with massive, and again, that's the same thing with Sony too, by the way. People talk about how Sony's entire business is they want to do this, like they want to do what HBO does with TV. They want to do it with video games, prestige video games, right? Okay, that's fine. But remember, things that are true now will not always be true. One day there's going to be a PlayStation exclusive and it's not going to be very good. Mm-hmm. Like a big one, like Days Gone, obviously, but there were other games besides that. Yeah. But one day there's going to be like a Last of Us or an Uncharted or a Horizon that is, or maybe Ghost 2, I don't know, that is not very good. And so you're putting a lot of eggs in that basket. So be prepared for when that happens. Don't, go up this trajectory where you just assume every $500 million budgeted game you have is going to sell and be really, really good, because it's illogical and it's just not going to work out that way. The laws of nature and art dictate that won't happen. That's happened with, I think Marvel is a good example, right? A lot of Marvel movies are pretty good, and then they went on forever, and now there's a bunch of Ant-Man sequels that nobody gives a crap about, and they're not very good. And so it's okay, well, that's what happens. Sorry, I hit your mic. That's what happens. You keep making things, and it goes from there. So that would be the other thing I would say for Sony. Do we have any different ideas on cloud gaming? I
don't. Unless our internet infrastructure changes, I don't even want to think about cloud gaming.
I would agree.
I've used it before, and it has worked fine, but it is not what I will go to play my games, whatsoever. Yeah.
And that's another thing that I legit, and I'm not saying this to be condescending or be edgy, but legitimately, this judge that is overseeing this case, the FTC. They are light years more intelligent than me. They went to school for law. They passed the bar, yada, yada, yada. But do they understand the differences between streaming a movie and streaming a game? Do they understand not just in the technology that is needed, but in how the medium is different and what the medium necessitates, right? And the different paradigms that exist. Because if you're watching The Office and you're just having something on and the quality dips, it's annoying, but you can still see Michael Scott. If you are 15 hours into God of War Ragnarok and you hit a cutscene that you're never going to see again unless you record it or you go on YouTube, but you're experiencing it for the first time, and the quality drops or your internet connection goes out or something like that, that's really annoying. Yeah. that's an experience-killing moment, where in other mediums, it's just an annoying moment. And so when we talk about cloud gaming, do we understand those issues and how those issues, and maybe they do, I don't know. But yeah, when an FTC lawyer, and then the Microsoft corrected them and clarified that there's technically two versions of Elder Scrolls. There's the Elder Scrolls Online, and then there's
the Elder Scrolls 6 or
Elder Scrolls 6. And at one point, I think games industry pointed this out, that one of the lawyers accidentally said Elder Scrolls 16, which is coming out.
God damn.
and in parentheticals, I think it was games industry, was we're going to go ahead and assume he was talking about Elder Scrolls 7, unless because we don't think it's reasonable to assume that there are 11 Elder Scrolls sequels coming out between now and
one of them, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. Going nuts. Anything else here? Anything else we want to touch on? Both companies look silly. Both sides.
I think
silly.
FTC looks sillier, but
I think both companies and the FTC should just be dismantled.
We should have no government.
Exactly.
To quote Michael Scott, a baby should be president. We would have no taxes. We would have no war. We would have no government, and things could get bad. Yeah, I don't know. I think, and this is the same thing with like the Epic Apple lawsuit. Is like lawyers just making stupid arguments, clearly have never, looked at a console before, have never picked up a controller, and they're trying to argue in these areas that they clearly don't understand.
Both sides showed their whole ass, and no one looks good.
Yeah, but Richard, I think I agree with you. I think the FTC looks a little sillier. Not that Microsoft is coming out of this looking good.
Right, yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
AI will be a big part of EA's future, and that is according to EA CTO Maria Radulovic-Nastic, I believe that is.
You know what? I'm so proud of you for that quick thinking pronunciation.
I'm very good at
We're going to say
this.
You're correct. Marja is my guess.
It's okay.
Or Maria. I don't know. Sorry.
Oh, that sounds better, actually. Anyways, speaking at the Collision Conference in Toronto, Radulovic said, "I personally believe that generative AI will be a co-pilot to our people and has the opportunity to scale and enhance human creativity. But the top talent, especially the top talent that we employ, will be amplified and will never be, in my mind, replaced." GameIndustry.biz says Radulovic has seen experiments from Gen AI that have reduced tasks done in 6 months to 6 weeks, and some tasks that took a couple of weeks completed in a couple minutes.
We have not talked about AI, generative AI in games. Obviously, there is AI in games, depending on how you define it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to generative AI, that's the specific Chat GPT type stuff that's been big over the last few years. This is another thing that I'm skeptical of, and that scares me. Because one, the quality is just not good, and two, as much as these companies say it won't replace people, I just don't believe it. No. I just don't believe, because why? Why wouldn't they do that? It's like, of course they would. If you could have it, if you could have an AI, QA a game for you, why would you hire 10 QA people?
Yep, exactly.
When you could have an AI do it, even if the AI does it worse.
Why spend 5 years to pump out a AAA title when you can do it in a year and a half?
And obviously that may not be generative. We're talking AI on a wider scale, but generative AI I also don't like. And I also hate that, like, when I play games now, I hate this feeling that I see something that's a little uncanny, and I'm just like, I won't name the game, but I was playing a game recently, a game that I've talked about in the last few weeks, and I saw an image in this game, and this image looked like the skin on a person was really smooth and kind of weird, and I was like, damn it. And I thought, I
did it. You blew it up.
I hated that I didn't know if it was
real or AI.
And I also hated
real.
just the fact that I had to consider that. Because there are games in different studios that have been caught using these things, and I don't know. It's not created by a human, so there's no thought. It's I'm not an expert behind the technology, but I mean, it's essentially a really advanced Google search. You put an image into Google reverse image search, and it's going to pull up images that look like that.
Yeah,
it's not because it knows what it's looking at. It's it can pull up images that have the same color space or whatever. And generative AI does that. It just puts the image together, or you give it a word and then it creates an image based on a database it has of that image and reconstructs it. And so there's no thought put behind it. It's just sort of regurgitating something that has already existed. And the thought of that in games just sucks, not only because it's cheap, but also because it sucks. It's just not very good. Sorry, Connor, do you have like a musician take on?
Kind of. Just more of an artist take on it.
That's fine.
Well, and it goes into the no like conscious thought behind it, because there was a time when the art generation AI was like really starting to hit the cultural forefront, and people were talking about it a lot, to where there's a lot of pushback from artists. And everyone that was advocating for the AI or pushing out the AI was like, we quote unquote ethically source all the information that they put in. And then the artist started uploading to DeviantArt and other art repositories online images that were just the cancel red circle with a line through it about AI art. And a lot of AI art started to feature that prominently.
I think I remember that story.
Yeah. And so one thing I don't trust, especially EA, about doing is making sure that whatever they're generating with this art, they have the rights to generate from.
Yeah. And she touched on that in her interview, and she talked about ethically sourcing and stuff like that. But to me, that question is, it's almost not as important as, okay, but do you really need to use it in the first place? And is it the way is it implemented? Because I'm not going to sit here and say there are no uses for generative AI in games, because I don't make games, so I don't know, right? So I'm sure there are ethical uses for it. And I think that's the most important question is, are you replacing somebody who you could pay a livable wage? Because if you are, then it's like, why not just do that? Because Andrew Wilson doesn't need 20 extra bucks in his fucking $20 million a year salary. Give that to somebody who could, who could rent an apartment and make a living. Do that instead. And if you can sincerely tell me, no, this is definitely the best way, then we can go to. And I'm not trying to poo-poo what you're saying. You are correct.
So the thing is that it doesn't matter who questions whether or not they should. They're going to.
And that's also true.
They're going to use AI, generative AI, in their games from here on board. They've put their foot forward. They're going to start doing it. It's not that.
And they think about it for
they say will be a co-pilot.
Oh yeah,
it's not will be. The fact that they're even mentioning it means they're going to implement it.
They already probably have started to.
They probably already have.
Games have been caught with generative.
Alright.
Because we go back 6 months, we talk about NFTs in video games, and we're going to start implementing NFTs in video games, which they already started doing.
Yeah, and the big difference there is that NFTs weren't profitable.
Yeah,
at least on a large scale. There's still NFTs in like Madden and shit like that because there's a small market for them. I would assume that's why they're there. But like NFTs in wider games, like the Ghost Recon bullshit, it's not there anymore because there's just not a market for it. So as opposed to something like generative AI, where
so the conversation now for generative AI needs to be because they're going to use it. The fact that they're considering it means it is going to be implemented at some point for a period of time. The conversation needs to be, how are you going to guarantee that you are not misrepresenting other people's art and misappropriating it?
I think you're right. Richard, you were going to say something? I
was just going to mention how we were talking about if they were thinking of using it, not thinking of using it, but their shareholders already decided that they're going to use it. They it was brought up to them and they said, wait a minute, we can make more money by doing less work. Let's do it. And that's plain and simply it. So it was just going to tie into the no, they're not thinking about it. They're already doing it.
Did you guys see the Samuel Jackson show? You guys see that
yeah,
one?
Secret Wars, yeah.
Secret War, the intro
the intro is AI.
And that's the thing that it's just like, and I think I saw that they said that nobody's job was replaced, but still, even then, it's like what you're looking at is not, there's no thought behind it. And I hate that fiction or content or culture can just be reduced to what is essentially like, we already have so much stuff that is based on formula and algorithms, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So there's a phrase, the flattening of culture. And I'm not somebody who likes to make giant statements about like today's generation or art, I think a lot of times when people say stuff like that, they're blatantly wrong or they just don't know enough. But I do think there is something to say about how much content today you get that is totally based on advertising algorithms, market bullshit. You're put into a bubble, and if you open up YouTube in a clean browser that you've never gone into, and you search a game trailer, and then you load the YouTube home screen, all you're gonna get, God of War Ragnarok trailer. Go back to the YouTube home screen. God of War Ragnarok, 10-hour play.
You're going to get all the spoilers.
You're going to get all the spoilers. You're going to get right because the algorithm thinks this person watches God of War Ragnarok. So it just, and it happens with streaming services too, where it's like, you get delivered. And so what happens is
yes,
you don't, and I'm not saying this necessarily a bad thing.
But
having things delivered that you want, but on the other end,
right? But I don't want it all the time. That's the thing, yeah.
It's so concentrated that variety and exploration of different things you may like or find interesting dies, and then what happens with that is more niche things die, or things that may not be as popular die, and that sucks. And the only reason any of that happens is because the companies that implement it need to shore up their bottom line as much as possible, and that's the best way to do it. And so that's why at the end of shows you have to panic because you want to listen to the credits, or you want to watch the credits, or you want to think about what just happened. You don't want to see the Netflix logo go up again, so you're trying to grab the remote to stop the play next button from launching. Those are the only reasons that those things happen. So I do think there is and so bringing that all back around to AI again. It's like AI is another way to just automate like something to just throw in front of you. And so even if it doesn't replace jobs, I do think there's just the ethical consideration of, but is this worth, I don't know, is it worth making? If there's no thought, if it's just there to satisfy some like quick, microwaved type content. I don't know. To me, it's not a future. That's not the kind of content I would want. And I hate thinking that one day you're playing games and major elements of a game have been generated from AI. And I mean, in the sense, obviously AI has been used to make games for a long time, where there's different contexts of AI, right? When we're talking about it. There's like lighting AI and stuff like that I think has been around for a while. But the specific one we're talking about now, I think is definitely worrisome. Connor, were you about to say something else?
No.
Oh, okay. So. Richard.
We got a story from IGN stating that Perfect Dark is still in pre-production. And this was written by Rebecca Valentine, who is from IGN as well. They spoke with 13 sources familiar with the game's development. The new Perfect Dark is being made by The Initiative, which was a new studio formed in 2018. Sources say that little progress has been made on Perfect Dark since 2020, which I think is when they announced it,
right? Yeah, I think
The
Initiative formed in 2018. 2020 was that announcement trailer.
Right.
Yeah.
IGN says why this has happened has to do with a fraught co-development partnership, the pandemic, tech challenges, an ongoing exodus of significant talent, and unclear direction from the management that has kept the game in development limbo. The initial plan for Perfect Dark was ambitious and was compared to the massive TV film franchises like Game of Thrones and Westworld. Anyways.
Okay, I'll
complain. Your segue.
I put a surprise in the notes because it was there for myself because I was writing it this morning.
Yeah.
I found it funny that they compared it to Game of Thrones and Westworld because both of those shows ended well, and then /S meaning sarcasm.
Yeah.
Because neither of those shows exactly. Westworld had like a couple seasons and flamed out, and then there was trouble, and then obviously Game of Thrones. I don't know what happened to Game of Thrones. I don't even remember it.
They ran out of source material.
Continue, Richard.
Several employees from early development recalled the designation Quad A thrown around to describe the game. Quadruple A titles, like AAA titles.
Yep.
Sources, which is the second time we have heard this.
Yeah, it is.
Sources said people in charge were unable to communicate a clear vision for the game. This may have been due to the initiative's co-development relationship with Certain Affinity. Certain Affinity was more used to working on specific elements of defined games rather than being a partner to bounce ideas off of. And that contract ended in 2021. Luckily, there's a new partnership with Crystal Dynamic and has helped the game make progress, but Perfect Dark is still in the earliest stages of development. Multiple sources who worked on the Perfect Dark in the last year said that in its most recent iteration, they would consider Perfect Dark to be more of a Crystal Dynamics game than one by the Initiative. Xbox during all of this has been very hands-off. Bad. Matt Booty characterized Xbox's approach as a middle ground and said that some of the Initiative's struggles were less of a result of Xbox's attitude towards its studios and more of an inevitable reflection of the struggles of starting a studio from scratch ahead of a pandemic. Okay, whatever.
A lot of there. So first thing, and this may not necessarily be the most important thing. We just got we're not saying 4A. We're just not. Can we not do it? There has not ever been a game that I played that I said to myself, "This is like." There have been amazing. I don't know. Just this idea that it represents a new paradigm, a level above. Both games now that I have heard, 4A, one of them is
a failure.
Just one of the dumbest games I've ever played, Callisto Protocol, and the other one is still in pre-production.
Yes.
So you know what? We're 0 for 2. You're sitting on the bench.
Unless your game is full body VR, I'm actually in that world. Do not call it Quad A.
Yeah, exactly. So we got to stop with that and it's not even like a marketing thing because they're saying it internally and they're saying it in job applications. And this was used as far back as 2018. There was a job application for Perfect Dark that said 4A game back in 2018. But still, we got to stamp that out right now. So if you're listening and you happen to be working on a game, Mark Dara,
and you have the audacity to call it a Quad A game.
No, just stop. It's obnoxious. It doesn't mean anything. AAA is already obnoxious. It just means you have a lot of money. That's all it means.
That's all it is.
So Quad A, please. AA makes more sense because at least you can understand. But 4A doesn't make any sense because it's just like it doesn't matter. Yeah. Can we please just not do that? I don't think I'm being unreasonable. I just find it that shouldn't be the goal. Just make a good game. Don't worry about if it's AAA. Mm-hmm. Know your budget. Mm-hmm. Make a good game. Just do that. There was not significant crunch on this, which is good to hear because
doesn't sound like they've had a chance. Yeah.
But usually in a story like this, it's like, oh, and by the way, not only has it been development hell, they've also been crunching for 8 straight months or something. So
they've worked 36-hour days.
So yeah, right. So thank goodness. I don't know how to manage a studio because I'm not an executive or anything like that. I do know that like in every documentary about an album or like, I don't know, a movie, there is never a scene where the people making it are like, oh, and the chief financial officer walked in and said this, and that's why we have this iconic scene. That never happens. Mm-hmm. It's always like, oh, this movie's garbage, and one of the reasons is the executive wanted this, and that led to the garbage movie. Like that... I'm being somewhat facetious here, but
I don't know about that. That's pretty accurate.
Never happened in the history of all time. So just, I think we gotta state those things. So while I understand, I've never managed a studio in my life. I also think that executive decision making is never gonna align perfectly with creative decision making because there's 2 paradigms. There's got to be a sweet spot. I don't know if Xbox has found it yet. How would our reaction to this news differ if, what was that game that came out, the vampire game? I already forgot. Redfall. If Redfall was good, or even good, if it was just good, I think there would be a different reaction to this. But this is now like 2 times this year we've heard about an Xbox game where both times part of the narrative is Xbox likes to be hands off. And I think that's what you would want. That's what you want to hear.
Yes.
But they're not doing a good job. So as much as I want creatives to be in control of their projects, there also has to be, the completion urgency. I think there is
a different. This is going to sound. Maybe it'll sound terrible. I don't know. I think there's a difference from having like Xbox coming in and being like, "You need to change this. You need to do," and them going, like.
No, you're correct.
Can you hurry up, please? Like, I think there's a difference between those 2 things.
Yes.
And it's very cool that Xbox and Phil Spencer have decided to like let studios do their thing, but I think they do need to have that like, please, can you hurry up? Can you get things done? Agree. Or just what's going on? Like type of response.
And my fear is that in a quest to fix this, they overcorrect. And then all of a sudden it becomes Electronic Arts, where I'm just going to characterize it this way, even though I know it's not necessarily true. Where they're kicking in the door and saying, "Hey, where's your looter shooter at, bruh?
Yeah.
Where's your such a good idea?" And then Anthem happens, and it's like the Eric Andre meme where he shoots a Hannibal and it's
Why
like,
would they do this?
Who made BioWare make Anthem? Anyway. So I don't know what the solution is there, but they have to figure that out. And there's a crap ton writing on Starfield, I think, because Xbox needs good news. The Xbox showcase was exciting,
promising,
but it was also trailers for games we knew existed, and there wasn't a ton of release dates, like definitive release dates. So if Starfield comes out and it's really, really good, I think that's going to be a huge sigh of relief for Xbox.
It'll definitely be re-energizing for sure.
Because finally you have now... Starfield was also in development before Xbox purchased ZeniMax. So Microsoft purchased ZeniMax. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was. So that's important to remember. But still, I think just from an optics standpoint, if Starfield is really good, then Phil Spencer can hit the press rounds and go, hey, we're really excited about this game, and it's, the narrative is not going to be what's going on at Xbox Studios. Yes, Connor.
I was just going to say, given the continued history of Bethesda launches, I don't have too high of hopes for Starfield being an amazing game. Probably going to be buggy as hell.
Hope not.
Because it's a Bethesda title.
You guys, that's part of the charm. Come on.
Oh, geez. Okay. We're going to argue like it's 2011 and we're...
Oh, yeah, that
every
Bethesda
time,
magic.
Hey, every time, that's the excuse. It's part of the charm.
No, it sucks is what it's a part of. It's a part of the...
I've gotten way too much entertainment from giants hitting you and you launching into the space.
Okay, I'll excuse one. I'll excuse one bug and that's it.
The Skyrim space program is amazing.
It's a crossover. This is crossover Starfield.
That's how it starts. You're in Skyrim, you get hit by a giant, and then you land on a spaceship, and that's where the game
then
starts.
You close your eyes and you open it, and you're on a cart in space.
Space cart. Going to space jail.
Okay, let's do. I'm hearing fireworks. Let's do our tidbits real quick. What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits. That Daniel Tosh would make up for "Is it racist?" Where they come up with words that sound racist but are just made up.
I'm glad we cut out that section when the tidbits is playing, because now they're just coming into. It sounds like one of those words that sounds racist.
Well, do you want to say it again?
Spaggin.
That's a space dragon.
Yeah, spaggin, if you will.
But it does sound like one of those Daniel Tosh, is this racist word? Anyway, what's the tidbit?
Can't do it. All right, this is a big tidbit, and it's not much tidbit. It actually should be its own story, but I took it as my own because it's my baby. But a huge, gigantic 72-page PDF of classified Sega of American documents from 1996 was just posted online. Tons of info, including manufacturing costs, retail margins, sales, product strategies, emails, etc., leaked onto the internet. There are even storyboards for the commercials that they filmed for that time.
This leaked just like a couple hours ago, or at least
it was yesterday. It was yesterday.
The first story I saw was a couple hours ago.
The people in the know, the story was yesterday.
Okay.
But
Richard, he knows people.
Kelsey Lewin and Frank Cifaldi. Okay, we get it.
I got it from some random dude. Anyways, I'm gonna give you guys some highlights that I thought were very interesting, and then I have an email I want to read as well. Manufacturing costs for the Saturn in early '96 was $232 for each console they sold. So it cost them. The retail margin was only 6%, meaning retailers only made $15 per Saturn sold. Internal emails showed that there were concerns about retailers possibly dropping product, which they did. At least a lot of them did, before and after.
What does dropping product mean specifically?
Like, we're not going to carry Sega stuff anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, but that was also part of Sega's fault as well.
For a second, I thought it meant like dropping price, but no, that's.
Oh no, yeah. Just like dropping product clusters.
To make less money.
Shenmue was being tracked for a 1998 release on the Saturn.
The strangest game series in history of video games.
It is a strange game series. Without it, though, we wouldn't have the Yakuza series, which I'm thankful for. But seeing Shenmue run on a Saturn is unbelievable because that game did not come out till the Dreamcast. So, which is the console afterwards. Funny translation errors such as Duke Nukem 3D and Crash Bandicoot. those were out there. Fiscal year 98 showed that the Genesis would be sold at $49.99 and the Game Gear at $29.99. The target markets were 8 to 14-year-olds and 6 to 12-year-olds, respectively. Key issues with specific games were brought up. There was a football game from Microprose, which was stated at 6 months late and still not finished. Very low quality and will damage Sega brand if released. Suggestions were to kill the title or sell it to a third party.
Microprose is back. They've been releasing games on Steam. I don't know if it's
really cool.
Yeah, they've been releasing like combat simulator type things.
Yeah, that was kind of their jam.
I don't know if it's like the same company or just somebody just bought the name. I don't know.
That's cool. Yeah, because they had like I know their logo, I know their games, and they were all just like, that's interesting. But I do want to read a bittersweet letter from Tom Kalinske about the Sega Saturn. That I'll read right now, and its subject for the email was the Saturn success in Japan. And Tom Kalinske said this: "It is one thing to hear/read about how well we are doing in Japan versus Sony. It's another to personally witness it. I just visited 10 retail stores in Tokyo, most in Akihabara. It is now spring break, so the crowds of teens/college kids are huge. We are killing Sony in every store. Saturn hardware is sold out, and there are stacks of PlayStation. The retailers commented they can't compare true sales rate because Saturn sells out before they can measure accurately. Our interactive displays are better, our software displays and stocking are far superior. It is not unusual to see 40 to 50 copies of Panzer's Y or Virtual Fighter 2 stocked in even small stores, and they are selling fast. I wish I could get all of our staff, salespeople, retailers, analysts, media, etc. to see and understand what's happening in Japan. They would then understand why we will win here in the US eventually. How do we show that at E3? Tom."
I love that. So that email, and he's not necessarily wrong. I think
he's not wrong.
What he's seeing.
Yeah, he's
but
not.
At the
wrong.
same time, I do feel like that is the perfect Always Sunny intro.
Yeah.
Like Dennis walks in with Mac, and he's like, Mac, listen, we're selling, we're killing Sony. It's gonna be amazing. Yeah. Cut to the Always Sunny PlayStation outside.
Right.
I'm like,
the game gets wrecked by Sony.
The perfect cutaway.
It is. Yeah. That the whole paragraph is very uplifting and very cool. The line, "How do we show that at E3?" is very important because they never were able to in America. Like Sega was never able to. They couldn't get it in America. Like Sega didn't know what would sell to American audiences, so they kept trying weird stuff that did not sell and nobody cared about. And so it's
guns, burgers, and Jesus.
Like the Three Dirty Dwarves and Mr. Bones.
I wonder how an alternate history looks where Sega is like still killing, like is still a viable console alternative. Because right now you have 3 big consoles, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got Nintendo, you got Sony, you got Xbox. But like, what if in a world where right now you had a 4th console? Like, I wonder what that world would look like. I wonder. It'd be interesting.
It's called Steam Deck.
It's called Utopia.
It's called Utopia. There's 4 games.
I wonder what it would look like too.
What here? Dig into your Richard game history brain. At what is? Hold on, let me figure out how to ask this question.
Oh my god, we're under attack.
We're under attack. Small arms fired. Give me a second.
I'm from Buenos Aires and I said kill them all.
You guys in your TikTok video. I'm just kidding.
It's Starship Troopers.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
I know. I haven't. I'm scared of bugs, so I can't watch Starship Troopers. All I know is when I look back on it, how hilarious that movie is, because it's like they land, and if I had to come up with a tactic not to fight giant bugs with, it would be fire from the hip as you're running. But I get the movie's satire, I understand. Yeah. Michael Ironside's in it, speaking of Sam Fisher. Anyway, the question I was going to ask you...
Speaking of Sam Fisher.
Earlier in the episode. The question I was going to ask you, how many... what is the max number of consoles that have been, like, prime consoles that have been selling at a concurrent time? Does that make sense? Was it like the late 90s?
It was early, mid-ish 90s. I think there's maybe 5.
Because you had a Sega console,
you had Sega, you had Sony, you had 3DO, you had CDI, and you had Jaguar.
And those would be
so within a span of 3 or 4 years, you have a lot of crossover. Span of 1991 to 93-4. You had Jaguar, CDI, 3DO, and TurboGrafx. So maybe 5, 6.
Interesting.
Because that was still not necessarily the infancy of video games, but infancy of video games to where everyone knew how to do it now. And now it's the fighting for a piece of the pie. So.
And I'm assuming they were all operating at different markets because it wasn't like all of those consoles were big in Japan and had US.
They're all the one that probably fumbled the biggest was TurboGrafx, because that was from NEC and Hudson, and they had a lot of really good games, but I don't know why they couldn't get a grasp in the US. Their games were on cards. They were on like chips, and you'd slide them in, and they looked better sometimes than Super Nintendo games.
And it's like the 90s are like when you first start a Crusader Kings game, and there's like all these different countries. And right now is like the end. There's like 2 countries left. There's like 3, maybe a Civ game, Connor. There's like 3 countries left, and that's it.
Yeah. But thank you for making it relatable to me, Tyler.
Of course, yeah. Well, you only understand things if it has a UI and a map, so hey, gotta make you understand. Okay, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse, and we will not see you next week. We'll see you the week after.
Bye-bye.